Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to today's cybersecurity fireside chat where we talk about all things security. My name is Steven, and joining me today is our special guest, Adam Warren, Director of Information Technology at Jerome's Furniture. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Stephen.
Now, Adam, just a little bit about Adam before we get started. Adam is a seasoned cybersecurity leader with over 25 years of experience in developing and managing effective security programs. As a director of information technology, he specializes in aligning business objectives with actionable security strategies, leading cross-functional efforts, and implementing innovative solutions to protect his retail IT environment. Now, I was really interested in this, Adam, is that Jerome's Furniture is sizable IT footprint, right? Multiple locations. I think it's 20 plus stores, corporate office, distribution centers, clearance centers, and also they have a very large retail online presence with their customer-focused retail website where you can purchase, all the different things, that you would want to put inside of your home. And then also, I was checking this out earlier on your website. It was the 3D floor planner tool on the website to help customers visualize how furniture will fit in their space. And it's an interesting story, really. A couple years ago, wife and I went refrigerating shopping, and I'm like, for a big refrigerator, and the wife fell in love with this one big giant Sony refrigerator. And, we order it and get it delivered and everything else and find out it would not fit in the space that we actually had for the refrigerator. So kind of a funny. Anyway, I had to like modify the wall and modify the cabinets to get this refrigerator, so I didn't want to send it back. But so anyway, before we get begin chatting about all things security, how about sharing what it's like in your daily life at over there at Jerome's?
Sure. Daily life. Yeah, I think we mentioned I've actually been with the company quite a while, so it's definitely changed in all the years. I live about 100 miles away from my office, so prior to COVID, I was driving in Monday through Friday, doing about 5 hours commuting every single day. So, so I got used to doing a lot of stuff over the phone while I was
Right.
commuting. Um, But my day to day nowadays, I do about one day in the office, and that's kind of when I meet with all my guys, my managers, and like my IT infrastructure guy, my security, all of that, and we discuss the week, the prior week, the next week, all the kind of stuff. So that's kind of my in-person meetings day, and then the rest of the week is at home in this office right here. Um, and pretty much I have a lot of standing meetings these days.
Right.
So I try to
Right.
fit in. I'm a hands-on technical guy. I've been doing it for a long time. So, uh, and it really anything technical. I like, electronics, robotics. I'm the quintessential nerd who kind of is into all that stuff. So, the home lab, testing out security stuff, testing out AI is the big one right now. We're having a lot of fun with AI. Um, but yeah, just a week of a director's life. I think it's probably pretty typical. Um, Basically a lot of education, a lot of reading, a lot of seeing what's going on with our peers. The security world, reading all the security briefs. Um, so that's kind of my week. But it's funny. Every week it changes because it's IT environment, right? So we
Yeah.
also have fires that break out and you know things that pop up and you have to deal with them. So you
Well,
try
not
to
only
fit it
do you
all
have
in.
all these brick and mortar stores, right? So you've got point of sales,
Yep,
you've got some infrastructure, some IT infrastructure in all these remote locations, right? And
correct.
they're probably all somehow connected back to the mothership. And then you've got the main office and some distribution centers where, the trucks are coming in and out and all of that, all the infrastructure that's required for all of that. And also I'm guessing tons of like personal identifiable information, right, from all of your customers,
Yeah,
addresses and phone numbers and then it's certainly a lot of payment card information as well, because I imagine, all of those, transactions that these stores are performing. And then, of course, when you tie all the online stuff into it with your web presence, which again, I have it up on my screen right here. It's a very well done website. I don't know who did it for you, but Yeah, I'm
Thank
guessing.
you.
Yeah, I'm guessing you've got tons and tons of different responsibilities in the organization.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it keeps growing.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've been here for a while, so I remember back in the day when it was pretty simple. Cybersecurity when I started was make sure you change your password and don't
Right.
share floppy disks. That's definitely grown. I've watched it grow in responsibility. I remember back in the days also, and I'd felt bad for public companies because they had all these regulatory issues with like Sarbanes-Oxley and NIST and et cetera. And they're like, oh, I would hate to have to deal with all that stuff. Well, lo and behold, we're in California. We have CCPA, CPRA, HIPAA. We've got all
Right.
like, PCI DSS4. We've got all this stuff now. So, um, and then we're still, relatively, I wouldn't say small, but we're not like a multi-billion-dollar corporation that can throw tons of resources at stuff. So we have to be very smart and judicious about where we put our efforts and make sure we comply with everything.
So what are some of the greatest cyber threats that you've are worried about, or some things that you may have seen in the retail world is a lot different than, finance and, healthcare and education, manufacturing. I mean, the retail is sort of its own like monster, right? I mean, they're just the
Kind
connected.
of is, yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
what?
we're dealing with hands-on transactions in stores and especially when it comes to like PCI stuff. Um, and even CCPA stuff. Like this is the stuff we have to deal with every single day. It's not like it's confidential, plans for a jet fighter or something that you just got to keep locked up somewhere. Like
Right.
we have to protect data that is used every single day, and it's part of our daily transactions. So,
Right. Right.
um, what keeps me up at night? Probably all the same stuff. Ransomware attacks are still a big deal. They cripple companies. Um, keeping that stuff, data breaches is another one. Um, Especially with uh, kind of going back in my past, we did a lot of, put a lot of effort into kind of building a fort around our systems, right? So I always liken it to like we have a Winchester safe. Uh, then lo and behold, after years and years, you look and the safe's empty. And
Right.
everything's moved out to the cloud.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's like, okay, well, now you got to secure all this other stuff. That's really just other people's systems. And so trying to do that is another issue. Um, but yeah, just keeping up with it all is definitely a daily, uh, it's several jobs and rolls up into one.
Right. And you mentioned clouds. So are you moving toward the cloud? Have you integrated into the cloud? Some of your infrastructure is riding on the cloud, I'm guessing, or kind of a combination?
Uh, Sort of, with our type of company, I think a lot of companies back when I remember when the cloud was new, and it was really inexpensive to just kind of lift and shift all your stuff off to the cloud. Um, and a lot of people did that, and then they kind of found out that oh, they can now that we're there, they can raise our prices on a whim.
Right.
So we actually didn't do that. We kept a lot of our stuff in house and um, we kind of recognize the savings there. Just because of what we do doesn't lend itself to having to scale, up and down rapidly or anything. So um, our kind of sort of hybrid approach seems to work. What has started happening though is SaaS solutions. We may not have moved our infrastructure off to like AWS or anything, but um, we've slowly, it's almost like a shadow IT thing. Departments go, hey, we need to move to this now. And
Right.
everybody starts moving all their critical business processes to service providers, sometimes not informing us until there's an issue. So that's kind of an issue too. I think it's harder to wrap security around a SaaS solution versus like just if we moved infrastructure. I think that's a lot easier to build your tools around on that stuff. One is a SaaS solution, it's kind of theirs. So you have to adapt your processes to compensate for that.
Right. So I would imagine like ordering and all, all the inventory stuff is probably, SaaS based today. All of your Maybe your CRM is, could be SaaS based, et cetera. So I would
Yeah.
imagine lots and lots of different pieces and softwares and everything. Because you think about a retail, I mean, hundreds of different items, if not more. It could be thousands of different items that you folks sell, and
Yeah.
trying to keep your hands on all of that and provide not only infrastructure and the ability to run these SaaS, solutions for the various departments, but also keeping that infrastructure, the bottom line, the underlying infrastructure secure as possible to making sure that these things will be effective and, won't cause any security breaches.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about kind of how you transformed, right? You had mentioned this. We had a previous call, sort of a preliminary call around, what we were going to discuss, and sort of this shift of taking this reactive approach to security and more of a proactive, offensive approach to security. So tell the listening audience about what was behind that thought process, and also any bumps along the way, of what
Exactly.
how did that all just sort of like, come into existence?
Yeah. Well, obviously we've been doing it for quite a while. And we started off using the tools that were best practice of the day, which is, vulnerability management. And and yeah, there are probably a lot of swear words said when starting to use those products. Mainly because it did a pretty good job, a thorough job of like, searching out all your stuff and finding vulnerabilities and telling me what you got. The only issue with that is it would say, okay, here's your remedies. You have literally thousands of things you need to remediate. Um, then when you got down to it, if you actually put an eye to it, you could, do all those little individual fixes and drive yourself crazy. Or you could go, I think we just change the Java edition, like do an update on the Java. You do that, like, oh, that solves 1,000 of them.
Yeah, it just solved a whole lot of them, right?
So it would have been nice if the software at the time could just go, yeah, just do these three things, and that's what it'll do. So yeah, it was we had to come up kind of with our own approach to managing these vulnerabilities. On top of the fact that sometimes you're running software that you can't, your version's stuck on it for whatever reason, so
Yeah.
you have to do some sort of mitigation. And it's not going to tell you how to do that. Um, one of the things we loved about finally having a product like Horizon 3's NodeZero um, is that number one, it's not telling you every tiny little thing that 80% of them nobody's ever going to use to breach your network or get into your system. And you're going to waste a lot of time on that stuff instead of real threats. This thing literally, attacks your network like a hacker would, and shows you what is really vulnerable. But then on top of that, it lists all the things that you need to do. And they're like the original what I hoped 10 years ago it did, which
Right.
is here are the actual things you need to do to remediate this. And they're very clear in pictures. And so my engineer loves this thing because he, gets through and it just makes it really clear on what you need to do to mitigate the security issues that it found.
So you kind of shifted from this reactive, and you mentioned it, you're doing vulnerability scanning, you run your scans, comes back with just a plethora of like results that are,
Yeah,
they're all critical too. If everything's critical, nothing's critical, right?
exactly. Yeah.
You
And it
know,
would scare the crap out of management because they,
they see this,
leadership were
well,
like,
they see this
why
stuff
does
and
it
they're
look
like,
like this?
yeah, why does it look, it's all red,
Yeah.
right? Everything we look at is red, right? All the dashboards are all red, and you're probably like, it's not as bad as it looks, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, and it sounded like you mentioned NodeZero, and so how did you first hear about NodeZero? It's always kind of interesting, right? Where did you're thinking, okay, we just going to live in this world of vulnerability management tools and just deal with this challenge? Or so how did you hear about NodeZero, and when did you first start using it?
The first time I heard about NodeZero was actually at right after COVID. I used to get all these emails saying, "Hey, we'll fly it up to so and so, and you do a sales pitch." I used to ignore all those. I wouldn't go anywhere. After COVID, though, I think we all had kind of this travel wanderlust.
Right.
So I got an invite saying, "Hey, we'll fly you up to, I think it was Vegas or something. We'll fly you up somewhere and for something called the Mid-Market Enterprise Summit." And it was a trade show where you kind of meet with peers and vendors, and you kind of go get together. Um, and it's pretty awesome because yeah, you get a sales pitch, but you also get peers to network with and talk to, and they'll give you real world, you know, what their advice is and what their experiences are with those same vendors. Um, so it was a great show, and I heard of this company, and I think you guys were one of the people doing the pitch. I was like, oh, that looks cool. It immediately clicked on, oh, that would be so much better than what we're doing.
Right,
On
right.
top of the fact that artificial intelligence was a big, thing, especially starting out like right after 2020. And I like the idea that it would, kind of do things that an actual hacker would do.
Exactly, exactly. So in the context of PCI, right?
Yeah.
Because you guys are, I'm sure you're getting ready for these PCI audits. I'm guessing you're probably being audited on periodic basis. And so March 31st of 2024, that's when PCI 4.0 came out, and it was mandated, manual penetration tests. So just curious, how has Node Zero or has Node Zero at all helped you kind of like prepare for those PCI audits or getting your kind of ducks in a row or things that you need to cross off or check this, check this, check this? Is there anything that NodeZero is helping you with in that context?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's just the idea that you kind of have um, positive feedback on whether your efforts are working. The interesting thing about governance, risk, and compliance, especially like compliance programs. There's compliance programs, and this is my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. But I feel like there's compliance programs, and then there's actual security, and they overlap somewhat, but they don't totally overlap. So you could be totally compliant with NIST and every other, thing you want to be compliant with, and still get taken out.
Right, right,
Um, but you have to do both because they're two attack vectors, really. You have the bad guys who want to get in and steal money from you, but then you have the government who wants to help, and and they're an attack vector too. They can hurt you too. Just keep making sure you have to be compliant with their stuff. So you have two things you have to do. And I think it's important. I think, especially retail businesses, they do everything they can to check the boxes, thinking that's going to actually make them secure, but it actually doesn't. What I love about NodeZero, and when it pertains to like PCI compliance, is you actually get to see that it's what you're doing is actually working and preventing the real world, bad things from happening. Um, and it's visual, and it's the other thing I was going to mention is, in the real world, if you like stick a computer on a public IP address, it's got constant noise of things attacking it
right. In
24/7.
seconds, yeah, within seconds,
um
it's discovered.
I look at the logs from the firewall. It's just like, it'll generate thousands of pages, like it's everything's hitting it. um and so you kind of need to do that to yourself, because if you're just going to do a pen test once a year or quarterly or whatever you're required to do. That's really, I mean, those are very far and wide point of time tests of your systems. So NodeZero lets you kind of attack yourself all the time, like the real world. So when you have weird things like, what was it, the one of the recent supply chain attacks, you see that something's misconfigured. You see, so, and that might have only been, you had your pen test this time, your physical pen test this time, and then in this tiny little space here is when you had that vulnerability. So you never would have caught it. With
Right,
Zero,
right.
you're constantly testing yourself and making sure you can find those things.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a big push right now. We're seeing it from the U.S. Navy, the Pentagon. They're all talking about these adversarial exercises, right?
Hmm.
You've got to kind of change this mindset from this defensive only practice. And you say, okay, I'm going to build all these walls of defense, and I'm going to hope that they all
And
work.
then hope. Yeah,
You don't know whether they're all going to work or not. And so you're
exactly.
kind of seeing a whole shift in the thinking, in the industry of saying, you don't know if any of this stuff actually works until you attack yourself. And so
Yes.
there's like kind of two ways or a couple ways, right? You either hire somebody that's an expert hacker, penetration tester, and you have them attack your network, right? And
Yeah.
see what they can discover. Or it sounds like what you folks are doing is kind of taking advantage of, a technology like NodeZero, which it just hacks yourself or hacks your network every single day if you like.
Hmm.
So just curious, how often are you running NodeZero? Is it like once a month, once a year,
No, I think we've got it running once weekly,
once a week?
at the
Right.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're seeing that more and more. And I've actually heard, some of our customers like, yeah, we just schedule it and we just
Hmm.
let it run, right? We just
Yep.
let it run daily, it's whatever. Um, so what was your kind of your first observation, right? You got a hold of your hands on Node Zero. And who was you mentioned there was a partner that you were working through their,
Yeah, VP16.net, a guy
okay,
named
okay,
Gary. And I've
okay.
been working with him for a long time. So,
So he
and
introduced
he
you to,
actually got us connected with you guys. So,
okay,
I saw your product at MES, but talking with him, he's like,
okay.
okay, I'll get you hooked up.
Right, right, right. Because
Um,
we
yeah.
work through a lot of the MSSPs out
So,
there and a lot of the consultants and the advisors that know security very well. So again, kind of back to your initial observation, you get it, you launch it. Were you kind of surprised at first or not?
yeah. Trying not to divulge too much information, but we did have a system a legacy system that is critical. We have to keep it going.
Mhm.
And we thought we were doing a pretty good job of keeping all our stuff internally secure, updated all the time. We're doing all the things we're supposed to do. Um, and then lo and behold, this thing runs and goes, "Hey, that legacy system you have," it literally like that's the nexus of destruction.
Right,
From there, it could like go everywhere else and
right.
go, and so it's something we didn't anticipate. And once we ran it, like, that's the first thing we did. I like, okay, let's mitigate that now.
Right.
But yeah, it's again, if you just do all the stuff you think you're supposed to do and check the boxes, you're probably going to be disappointed in your actual security stance.
So you found this legacy system. You'd rely on it, right?
Yep,
Probably one of those systems that like can't be updated or, so
exactly.
build a wall around it. I mean, you're like, hey, let's, kind of tighten down
Yeah,
what
pretty
has
much.
access in and out of this thing.
Yeah, you have to basically throw it in a DMZ and
All right,
make sure you whitelist everything that's touching it and
right,
like all
right.
the it's I mean it's a Windows server is what it was. So SMB ports, all the nasty stuff that you
Yeah,
just block all that stuff.
yeah.
But again, we wouldn't have known about it unless
Well, you kind of
um,
build a wall around it,
yeah,
and then I'm guessing you probably would have taken Node Zero and said, okay, let's retest, right, and see what it
exactly.
finds this time. That's kind of one of the beautiful things about, what the product actually provides is the ability of, okay, we found something, let's go ahead and mitigate. And mitigate's different than remediate. Mitigate's kind of
Hmm.
like a stopgap measure of saying, okay, let's build a little wall
Yeah,
around
we're stuck
it.
with this, but here's how we make it, as
Yeah,
good as we can.
exactly. Let's control the ACLs, what's coming in and out of
Yeah.
here, and then, launching the test against it again, so that you can say, okay, my, steps to, mitigate this issue or mitigate the concern or mitigate the risk has actually worked. And then, maybe someday when there is an update or someday when we can actually patch or someday if there's something to do, that's kind of consider that more on the remediation side, right? I'm remediating the root cause of the risk, uh,
Hmm.
so definitely cool. Um, so how are you like, you mentioned that you're kind of using it like weekly now. Have you used any of the other functionality? Because I mean, Node Zero comes with external, it comes with internal. They're doing the phishing, it's got that phishing impact or that phishing integration. 80 password audit, right? Kind of you can audit your passwords. Have you launched any of those types of operations internally?
Nice. I have not requested that. My engineer most likely has. Um, so I'll definitely ask him after this call to see if he's touched those products yet, those parts of the product. I do know, correct me if I'm wrong, do you have something, uh, another thing we like is being able to tell when something is hitting something.
Yes, yes.
Um, and I think you have a product like that.
We
I don't want
just
to mention brand names or anything, but basically the honey pots.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. We actually launched, it was earlier last year. It's late in the, I guess, in the second half of the year, tripwires, right? So
Yeah,
what
there you
it
go.
does is that while NodeZero is going through and, doing all of this testing and all this scanning and, finding all these exploitable attack paths, what it can do is it can drop these honey tokens, which are like decoys, in
Hmm.
very critical areas, right? And saying, hey, this is where all the data stores are, right? And we can drop these little decoys around there, or if a system, for instance, is known to be vulnerable and we haven't patched it yet and we're waiting to the next maintenance window or we got to do some regression testing, but I mean, this is a really critical system. We're not sure if a patch is going to blow something up. You can also drop those tripwires around there as well. And then you would be getting alerts, right? Saying, hey, somebody's ringing the bell, right?
Yeah,
And so that's what it is. So yeah, so it sounds like
nice. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
definitely interested in that. We have something like that, but we've had it for a long time, so I think a more modern version of it would be great.
Well, what it is too, what's beautiful of it, the thing about it is you don't have to really like do it on your own and figuring out where is the critical areas or where is the most choice area to put one of these tripwires or multiple tripwires because it kind of figures it out for you, right?
That's cool.
And then, now inside of NodeZero, you got a dashboard which shows you, hey, has anybody tripped this? And then again, it can alert any other systems, in your SOC or any of your SIM or anything like that. It can send off alerts with that as well.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
you asked me about when we first ran Node Zero, and that's actually one of the things that I noticed is our tripwires never went off until then. Then all of a sudden I started getting all sorts of alerts from.
That's funny. Yeah. We
So,
rattled everybody's chain.
yep.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Um, so I mean, in the context of like retail environments, right?
Mhm.
I mean, what would be your recommendation to these retailers today? I mean, even the large ones, right? And the smaller ones and the brick and mortar and the combinations and the hybrids. I mean, what would be your recommendation in the context of sort of defensive versus offensive?
Yeah.
What would be your recommendation to these folks out
Well,
there?
one of the things we're big on right now is playing with AI for development and large language models. I'm sure everybody's heard about this stuff right now. Um, that being said, we really are seeing a lot of great productivity gains, especially in our development team. Um, but my issue with that is, so we're saying great, it raises your skill level like this, it raises your productivity like this. We can do something in a day that used to take a month. The problem is bad guys can do that too.
Right,
They're going to have all those same tools.
right.
Um, so I think, yeah, you definitely have to have like your product uses AI. I think you kind of have to have we have to have our robots fighting their robots. Um, so I think it's yeah, the kind of the two things. One is yeah, you have to step up your game because the old technology is not gonna, that's not gonna work in the near future. Um, but then number two, you need to take that I we need to have positive uh, um, I'm trying to figure out what the words are. But basically, you need something like Node Zero where it's attacking you all the time. You need to, in the tripwires, you need to be saying positively that your stuff is working um, at all times rather than just hoping. And that's not going to work in the future.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
my advice.
I mean, well, this defensive approach for years, like I said, I've been in this industry for 30 years, and this defensive only approach, like even I would question. I'm like, I
Hmm.
know it's configured right. I know I did everything. I know I checked every box. I know, but how do I prove it's going to be effective?
Yeah.
And it sounds like, what you're saying to folks just like yourselves is just attack yourself, right? Is
Yeah.
go on the offensive, launch the attack, see where your weaknesses are, find those chinks in the armor, you know, shore up those areas and fix those things that are the highest risk. And at the end of the day, your PCI audits would be a little bit easier, at least.
Exactly. Yeah. Spend the effort on stuff that actually matters.
Yeah,
Because yeah, there could be a lot of noise that you waste time on. So this
exactly.
will help you.
Well, hey, I know we're just about out of time and I didn't see any questions come in. Again, we're always open to questions, but I think we covered it, right? I think we covered it well here, Adam.
I hope so.
Again, many thanks to you for joining today. And as
My
always, many
pleasure.
thanks to the listening audience, right? Because they kind of make this all worthwhile. And
Yeah.
if you have any questions, if anybody out there has any questions about Horizon 3, don't hesitate to send us an email at info@horizon3.ai. And if you'd like a demo, right? I mean, it's kind of like what you'd probably done yourself, Adam, was like, show me, right? Give
Yep.
me a demo. Let's see what it's like, right? I want to see what this thing is like before I would actually bring it in. And then, you can sign up for a demo on our website, check it out. And then we do all kinds of like proof of concepts and, proof of value evaluations and stuff like that. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. And any final comments for the listening audience, Adam?
Ah, just go do it.
Get her done. Get her done,
Go do
right?
it.
Get her done. All right, man. Well, take care, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, thank you.
All right.